There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from watching yourself too closely. Not weakness, not overthinking, something heavier than both. You're in a conversation, nothing difficult, nothing unusual, and somewhere in the middle of a sentence, without warning, without permission, a part of you quietly steps outside your own body, and suddenly you're watching yourself from just above it, noticing the sound of your own voice, calculating whether the last thing you said landed the way you meant it to, measuring the 2-second silence that followed, trying to determine what it means. The other person is still talking, but you already left. Not physically, in every way that matters. You've gotten very good at looking present while feeling like a stranger standing just outside the moment you're supposed to be living. Maybe you've felt this, maybe you're feeling it right now. Most people treat self-awareness like a virtue, and they're not entirely wrong. Real self-knowledge builds empathy. It builds depth. The world tells you to know yourself, examine yourself, look inward. But there's a point, and if you're watching this, you know exactly which point I mean, where the awareness stops generating clarity and starts generating noise, where the observer inside you stops producing insight and starts producing a relentless, restless commentary on everything you do, say, feel, and don't say, running constantly, never pausing, never satisfied, and then the most exhausting layer of all, being self-aware of being too self-aware, watching yourself watch yourself, the mirror reflecting the mirror, going back infinitely, leading nowhere quieter than where you started. This isn't arrogance, this isn't ego, this isn't narcissism. This is a nervous system that learned, somewhere early and somewhere real, that staying unaware was costly. And so it never learned how to rest. Here's what most people get wrong about this pattern. They assume it started in adulthood, that it's a habit you picked up somewhere. Stress, anxiety, too much introspection, that you can fix it by thinking less. But here's the part they miss. The watching didn't begin with you as an adult. It began with you as a child in a room that required it. Think about what it means to grow up in an environment where the emotional climate shifts without warning, where the mood of a room could change in a moment, where reading the subtle signals around you, a posture, a tone, the specific way someone set a glass down, was the difference between safety and something else entirely. That child learned to notice everything, to track everything, to file away everything, and they became extraordinarily good at it. The family called it perceptive. The teachers called it thoughtful. No one told them it was survival. And survival, and once it becomes automatic, doesn't ask for permission to continue. By the time that child grew into an adult, the monitoring had outgrown its purpose and continued on without one, rehearsing conversations before having them, replaying them afterward, naming their own patterns with startling clinical precision. They knew the mechanism. They understood the origin. They could describe exactly what they were doing and why. And they could not stop doing any of it anyway. More self-knowledge kept arriving. The quiet never did. Now here's where it gets interesting, because you might be wondering, why doesn't understanding it fix it? If you know the pattern, why can't you just stop? And here's the answer most people are never given. Because the understanding was never the problem. Susan Nolen-Hoeksema, a Yale psychologist who spent decades studying this, found something that matters enormously here. She drew a distinction between reflection and rumination. Reflection is purposeful. It examines experience in order to move forward. Rumination is repetitive. It circles the same ground, adding no new light. Only more passes over the same territory. And critically, rumination doesn't just fail to help. It actively deepens the distress. The more you turn the experience over, the worse it gets. Not because the experience was worse than you thought, but because the turning itself becomes the wound. There's also something called the spotlight effect, identified by researchers at Cornell, our consistent overestimation of how much other people notice what we do, what we say, how we appear. Most people experience this occasionally. For someone whose self-monitoring never rests, the spotlight is not an occasional miscalculation. It is the permanent condition of consciousness. And the spotlight you live under is one you installed yourself. Here's the part that should change everything. The self-awareness that refuses to switch off is not a character flaw. It's not excessive sensitivity. It's not something broken in you that more work will finally fix. It's the most intelligent available response to an unpredictable environment. The constant watching was not excessive. It was the smartest thing a child could have done. But here's the paradox, and this is the one most people who live inside this never quite reach. The very depth of perception that makes this so painful is the same depth that gives you something rare. You detect what isn't being said. You notice the thing beneath the thing that the rest of the room walked past. You can sit with someone in their uncertainty without needing it to resolve too quickly. You read the emotional subtext of a situation before a single word has been spoken. That is not a malfunction. That is rare, genuinely rare. Most people who are too self-aware have spent so long turning the instrument inward that they've never fully recognized what happens when they point it outward. When the same precision they use to dissect themselves is offered to another person, not as analysis, but as real presence, something occurs that most people will go their entire lives without experiencing. You carry that capacity. It was simply pointed at the only target that felt safe for long enough to become a habit. Now, here's what no one tells you next. The goal was never to stop being self-aware. The goal was to change your relationship with the awareness, because the observer inside you doesn't need to be silenced. It doesn't need to be argued with, or overcome, or replaced with forced presence. It only needs a different instruction, not judge, not critic, not the voice that archives every conversation for failures you can examine later. Something quieter, something that notices, and then lets the moment continue, without needing to archive it first. The brain is not fixed. Neural pathways built through years of hypervigilance are not the only routes available. The same brain that learned to monitor everything can, with the right conditions and the right gentleness, develop something alongside the old pattern, not replacing the awareness, resting beside it. And slowly, what changes is not the awareness itself. It's what the awareness is allowed to do after it notices. If you see yourself in this, if something here felt familiar from somewhere you've never had words for, then hear this. The observer that lives inside you was never your enemy. It was your companion through something that needed witnessing. It kept careful records when no one else was watching. You don't have to silence it. You only have to stop letting it deliver a verdict, because you are not a pattern in need of correction. You are not a problem waiting to be solved by enough self-knowledge. You are a person who developed, through circumstances you didn't choose, an extraordinary capacity for awareness. And that capacity has cost you something real. It cost you the ability to simply be somewhere without narrating it. You are allowed to exist before you understand the moment you're in. You are allowed to feel something before you can explain it. You are allowed to be in a conversation before you know how it went. Because the most self-aware person in the room has always paid the highest price for their clarity. And the most courageous thing they will ever do is not more analysis. It is learning, slowly, without perfection, to be present in a moment before the review begins. You were never too self-aware. You were simply never told that you were allowed to rest from knowing yourself.